All right, what's everyone's Matt Rosick, and this will be the next work in progress on the vinyl kits from Star Trek Next Generation. So this work in progress, I'm going to work on the bases. So you can see here I have 3D printed 4 bases. These are the smaller bases for Data, Geordi, and Picard. Now I think my screen is finally starting to die because everything turned out perfectly. These were printed just flat on the bed, no supports. And these are right at 6 1/4 inches in diameter, which is the perfect size for those 3 characters. But I had one little imperfection on each edge of the base. So I'm just going to I'm putting some Aves in there. Let that cure overnight. I'll sand it down. It'll be fine. For Worf, I have to do a 10-inch base, and for that I have to print it up. These took about an hour and 20 minutes each, so that's about 4-5 hours of printing between these 4 right here. And then Worf has a 10-inch base, and I've got to print it at an angle, and that's going to take like, I think it's like a 10 or 12 hour print because I got to. It's tall. It's going to take a good chunk of the transform print volume, and I hope I have enough resin to do that. I ordered some more resin today, but we'll see when it gets here. So I want to show you what I'm going to have to do. So this is the transporter pad from Star Trek Next Generation. I wish I had some black resin, because what I would do is I would print it in black, and then I would fill it with clear resin or white resin, and then I have like the look of the transporter pad. So unfortunately I don't have any black resin, so what I'm going to do is after I sand this down, I am going to fill these voids with a white resin or like a translucent resin, and then we'll sand it smooth, because right now the way it sits, the only person I can pin, like the way they stand on there, there's no place to put a pin for Riker's foot. I want to put a pin up in the heel, and there's nowhere to put a pin unless I get them way off to the edge like this, which I don't want to do. I want to kind of stand them here in the center. There's nowhere to put a pin, so we got to fill these voids with the resin and then sand them smooth, and we'll paint it. We'll paint all that out, that part black. So for like Data is the only one, and it's just because of the way his stance is that I can use the base without filling. So I could put a pin like right here for Data's heel, and that would work. But still, I want to be able to kind of replicate the transporter pad more accurately. Once I sand these and fix all these little edges, I have an extra base. I printed the very first one I printed, there was a hole here, like this was completely open. So I printed the next one, and I had just a little error, so it's not as bad. I can still fix this one, and if I'll use it for one of his future characters that he's going to send me later on. But you can see here, these are the little. This is from the Frozen Transform build platform. I have a Frozen Mega 8K coming in the next few months, so it's a little bit bigger, slightly better resolution. But these printed beautifully, except for that one little error. But so the next thing is I'm going to let this putty dry overnight. I'll sand it smooth, and then I'll put down probably just some. Once it's all sanded and everything, I'll put some tape on the bottom, and I'll fill these voids with some. I would really like kind of a white opaque resin that could maybe transmit some light. Otherwise, I can just do clear resin. I'm just gonna to the hobby store and find some 2-part resin that I can pour in there and do them clear, and then maybe paint the bottom side white so it still transmits light if he wants to light the bottom. And then I'll have to mask all this off to paint the rest black, which isn't the end of the world, but it's a little tedious. But yeah, so that's what I got to do. That's where we're at, and that's what I'll show tomorrow. I'll show you sanding the putty. Very exciting stuff, sanding. Okay, so continuing on with the bases, I got those 4 smaller bases printed out, and got the Aves putty put on the other day. And then here's a Worf's base. So this is a 10-inch base. These are about 6 1/4 inch. So I had the same little issue down here at the bottom where the supports failed. No big deal. As long as the top is fine, I can fix that little bit of putty. Now I did cure this. So these 4 I printed flat on the build plate. So no supports. You can see the holes here from the Frozen Transform build plate. This I went ahead and cured with the supports on, and the reason I did that is because something this large and flat tends to, if you cure it without the supports on, will tend to warp or curl. So it makes a little more work for post-processing, because now you just got to go and clip off all the supports. These are my heavy support settings, which work pretty good for this kind of, I could probably just rip these off, but because this is all going to get sanded on the bottom anyway. All I really care about, let's see, since this has been cured, these are hard, and this resin is Tech Fast. So this base took 24 hours to print. The other bases took about an hour and 15 minutes each. So I printed 4 because the first one was kind of a test and it worked. So we got about 5 hours. So about 30 hours in printing time total for the bases. And then I got to do all the other work on them. So again, 3D printing is not a fast process. It's just another tool. So I'm going to clip all these off and pull them off, and then we're going to sand this all smooth. And for this edge, I'm just going to probably use, I'm out of Bondo. I'm going to get some Bondo, dang it. I could use A's, but that would take overnight to dry. We'll see. I have to go get some white resin anyway, because what we're going to do is we're going to fill all these cavities with white resin. They're actually coming off pretty easily, even though it's been cured. It's got little pieces flying everywhere. Normally I would soak this in hot water and pull them off and then cure it, but like I said, I want to make sure that it didn't warp, so I cured it with the supports on. And I put quite a few supports on here. So I tend to use G2 box auto supports and then edit accordingly, just kind of taking off or adding where I need it. This is just full auto supports. I think I did it at like, I don't know, it was like 65% density. And I changed the angle of attack, meaning you can adjust it as far as like at what angle does the model have to be at a minimum for the supports to work or to attach themselves. So I changed it so the auto supports would attach themselves to the flat parts too. Because otherwise it was just wanting to attach it just to the edges of everything, and I needed support over the whole model, and that saved me from having to go in there and do it manually and putting in, which can take a little while. So we're going to pull these off. And we could put warp on it, make sure he fits. He better fit. So I measured it. Yeah, so I just had some support failures down here. I don't know, maybe it's just me because I'm not like I don't spend a ton of time 3D printing. I print enough for the stuff I got to do. So, and it's usually user error, but it's rare that I get like a perfect print off the printer out of the gate. I usually have to do some work. So let's get warp and see, make sure it fits. Oh yeah, perfectly. So that's a perfect size base for him. So like he's one of the guys I could, if I didn't fill these in, I could pin him to the base. But we're going to fill all these voids in with white resin, sand it. And then we'll mask off the white areas and paint everything black. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to fill this area. I don't need to show you that because it's going to be the same as what I did on here, but probably with Bondo. So I'm going to get some, this is some 180 grit sandpaper here. And again, it's going to be a lot of sanding on these before I remember to do anything. And I have to go buy the white resin today. I meant to do it this weekend. This is 180, I think. So like today's goal is to pretty much, if I can get the bases sanded and filled with resin and kind of let those dry or cure while I paint the uniforms. But actually I'd like to get the fill with resin and then pin everything. The sanding block's dirty, so it didn't stick. Hold on, I'll try that again. This is one of my old sanding blocks from when I used to paint cars many, many years ago. Get the dust off so the sandpaper sticks. Okay. sticks this time. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to sand off all these little nubs from the build platform. And the A's, where I built it up. I've always been a kind of guy that prefers to sand by hand and not power tools. It's slower, but I just feel like, I don't know, even when I did painted cars, I rarely used power sanders on cars. I just felt like it took off too much material too fast, and I ended up always having to add more filler or whatever to the work I was doing. So I've always been a hand sander and not using machines to sand. So again, it's take a little bit, but not too bad. And it's messy, it's dusty. Just turn it every once in a while, make sure we're standing everything flat. And when you're sanding big areas like this, you want to turn it every few sanding strokes, and that guarantees you're going to sand it flat. So if I just sat here and sanded in one direction, I could sand a concave shape into it, and we don't want to do that. But the great thing about those little nubs, they kind of like act as a sanding guide, because once those are gone, you know you're flat. I know a lot of guys are concerned who ordered the Mega 8K about the holes in the build platform. I like the holes in the transform build. I think the models stick better. And it just helps with the resin draining and stuff. And everyone's like, oh, you're going to get cured resin in the holes. I have yet to have any cured resin in the holes of the build platform of the Transform. I was freaking out about it. I think they should do a combination of a slanted build platform with holes. That'd be the ultimate combination, in my idea, in my mind. Okay, so that bottom is flat. I'm just going to show you one of these on camera because it's the same for all of them. Now we're going to sand the top a little bit. And then I'll clean up the putty work. I don't need to do a lot on the top. Just a little bit. Okay, like that. And then I've got this putty in here that I put in to fill a little printing error. So we're going to go in there and file that down. Some sanding sticks here. Let's just do this first. So when I fill in an area like this, I put in quite a bit more putty than I need so I can have room to shape it. Those A's actually cured for about, going on 36 hours. I put it on Saturday night. It's sat all day yesterday, Sunday. I didn't work anything. I didn't do anything yesterday on Sunday. I just kind of created war space, but I didn't work up in the studio at all. So these four would be relatively quick to sand and all that stuff. Now, since I did print this flat on the bill plate, there's what's called an elephant's foot, and it's a little ridge right here on the bottom. So I'm just going to go through and just sand that off. And that's from the initial print layers, because you do an extended exposure time. So like on the transform, I do, and also I got, because of the transform's resolution, you do get vertical print lines on a curve, when you print flat the bill plate like this. I'm going to sand those out real quick. And also the sculpt, if you zoom in on the sculpt, it's actually not a perfect circle. It's actually the outside edge is actually faceted. So I'm going to try to smooth that out a little bit too, so it's to the naked eye, you can't see it, but I could see it in T2 box when I was working on it. Because initially this base is about that big. It's smaller. So I resed it up. Because the guy who made this on Thingiverse, he had like a little chibi or super deformed Star Trek figure on it. Okay, so the outside edge is pretty good. Right there. So you can see that it took about, I don't know, 10 minutes to get it'll take about 10, 15 minutes to get each of these little ones prepped and sanded. Okay, so the only thing I do on this, I got to sand in here a little bit. Get a smaller piece of this 180. It's the perfect grit for this. I'm out of popsicle sticks. Normally I would I'd wrap some popsicle sticks in sandpaper and do that, but no. So I'm just going to put this on this file. And I'm just going to sand the inside here. Now I'm putting my finger here because I don't want to break through that edge. It's relatively thin. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure, I'm just letting the sandpaper do the work. Again, the only part that I care about is that top edge because this is all going to get filled in. So okay, so that one is all sanded. It looks really good. I may hit this again with some 240 or 320 just to kind of get rid of some of these heavy sanding scratches, but that's it. So I'm going to do that to all of these, and then I've got to figure a way to put I'll probably tape the back side of these so I can fill each of these little voids with the resin. So we'll do that when we come back. Okay, so I got them all these bases sanded and everything, and now I'm going to start trying to fill these areas with some white resin. So my plan is to fill the areas with white resin, sand them smooth again, mask off those white areas, and paint the other parts black. I thought about painting these black first and then doing the resin, but that doesn't make any sense because I got to sand them smooth anyway before I paint. So what I did is I went and cut a couple pieces of wood to fit. I cut one piece to fit the smaller base and another piece to fit the bigger base. And hold on, of course I'm not ready yet. Sorry. The reason I did this is because I want to clamp these down as the resin I pour cures, because I'm not sure if it's going to cause, the heat buildup would cause these to warp at all. So I'm going to clamp them down to this piece of wood, and hopefully once the resin cures all the way, we won't have any type of warping or anything. So that's my plan. I don't do a whole lot of this, so I'm kind of making this up as I go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tape the back side of this just with some tape, some kind of contractor's tape. And hopefully this will keep any resin from leaking out. That's my thought process, at least. We'll see if it works. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the bottom side. So I had a couple ideas I was playing with. I thought about doing these in clear resin, and then putting a piece of frosted material on the bottom here. So if my client wanted to like light the bottom up, like through his display case or something, but I don't know. I'm just going with this. So I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to also go this way with it. Hopefully this will seal everything up nicely, and we won't get any resin leaking out. Just plain old contractor tape, nothing special about it. Rub it down really good, so hopefully it seals everything. And anything that does leak out, I'll end up sanding anyway, but try to keep the leaking to a minimum. I'm just gonna cut off the excess tape just so it's easier to clamp. So let's see, I'm just gonna do one at a time, because the resin I bought cures pretty quick, and I probably won't be able to fill all the areas at one time, so it'll probably kick off before I get to that. It kicks off in about a minute. So we'll see. And the trick is to pour this without getting any bubbles. We'll see, so I'm gonna do one as an experiment, and then we'll go from there. If the first one works, then we'll continue moving on. Okay, get that out of the way. Just make sure it's sealed really good. Put that down, clamp it from 4 sides, keep it flat. So I'll probably start with pouring in the middle. My way out. And I clamp down. Like that. So what I'm using is this amazing casting resin. It's expensive stuff. This one kit was $20. I bought 2 kits. I'm hoping that's enough. It's not cheap for the amount. I think it's expensive for what you get. I have used this in the past for other stuff, but never for a purpose like this. So you have to mix it equal parts, 1 to 1. So let me get another cup. Part A, part B. Part A, part B. So it's pretty easy. The hard part is that it kicks off really quick. So the way this works is you mix it 1 to 1, and so wait for resin to change color, opaque white, and for it to harden depending on the size. Mass part will take harden with 5 to 10 minutes. The bigger the thicker the cast, the faster it will cure. So the more material you have, the faster it kicks off because it generates heat. It doesn't say how long for a full cure, but you mix it for 30 to 40 seconds, and then you have it about a minute to pour. So let's give this a shot. Let's see what happens. Get some part A. So I'm going to do a little bit at a time, like one area at a time, or a couple areas at a time. Part B. Get the seal off. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up. I'm going to use these cups here and do like just, I'm going to do 30 mils of part A. So there's part A, 30 mils. I'm going to do 30 mils of part B. And you want to get this as close to 1-to-1 as possible. Okay. Keep your mixing cups separate so you can mix it. And we're going to mix it together for about, Alexa, set a timer for 25 seconds.
25 seconds, starting now.
So you mix it for 25 to 30 seconds. You don't want to whip any air into it. Alexa, stop timer. Okay, so mix it for about 30 seconds. And now I can feel it heating up already. It's no big deal if I get some spillage over because it's going to get sanded. I want to get these big areas poured first. So I think okay, now it's going to start kicking off, I can tell. And that was just enough to pour those areas. So I'm going to let that sit for a second. And it should turn white here in a minute. Or in a few seconds at least. All right, I have a little too much in there. There it goes. Now I did get a little leakage underneath that started to fill up some of those other cavities, but that's okay. We'll just top them off. That should be okay. So I'm going to use this as an experiment, see if this works. And then we're going to, if it does work, I'll continue with the other ones. So that's how you do that. So I'm going to continue filling these areas, and then we'll come back in 15-20 minutes and see what it looks like. Okay, so I went ahead and just kind of poured a little kind of went in and filled any voids that I may have thought, put just a real thin layer of this resin on top of the whole thing. Now it's pretty warm to the touch because it's curing still. The thin stuff takes longer to cure because it doesn't generate as much heat. So I'm gonna let this, once this cools down, I'll take the clamps off. I don't want to take the clamps off until it's cooled down to prevent any warping. So, and then I'm finding mixed information as far as the full cure time. I've seen 20 minutes, I've seen 72 hours. So probably what I'll do is, once these cool down, I'll let them just sit overnight, then sand them smooth on both sides, and then they should be ready for masking and painting. So yeah, this should work out well, I think. I hope. Fingers crossed. I spent a lot of materials and print time so far, but I think it's going to be a nice effect. So while I work on this, I'm going to work on painting like the Riker's phaser, Worf's blade. I got to paint the tricorder, which will take forever. So while I work on this, I'm going to work on painting all those little details. I'm avoiding painting the uniforms until I have the bases not necessarily painted, but to a point where I can mark a hole for the peg for their foot. That way I don't risk messing up the paint on the figure. So that's kind of why I'm avoiding. I'm waiting for the uniforms to do last. So yeah, I can feel that it's a little, the center feels hard, like these areas, but some of these smaller areas, those are going to take a little longer to fully cure, I think. It took a long time for this area around here to turn white. So yeah, once this cools down, we'll take it off this block and then I'll do another one. Okay, so a little update on the progress of the bases. So this is the last base I'm doing. This is a 10-inch base. You can see I've poured all the resin in, and I've done it a couple of ways, but it took me about 3 tries before I figured out how to do it the best way. And basically I coat the board in packing tape instead of that paper tape, and it peels right off. So here is what I'm going for. Now these are a little wet. I just got done washing them, but this is the look after sanding and all that fun stuff. So I think these are going to look pretty good once I mask these off and spray them. So yeah, we're getting there. It's a slow process, but I think these will look nice when done. So yeah, just lots of sanding and all that fun stuff, but we're getting there. That's where we are. Okay, now we start the fun process of masking these guys. So it's actually not too bad because I can see the pattern through the tape, and I'm actually just able to kind of freehand this. If you're real careful and you have a very sharp blade, so the way I do this is I get this at an angle. Let's see where I can find a spot where I haven't cut. Like I already cut that one, I think. So basically I put the point of my blade right in the corner there, and I bring the blade down really low, so I have a very shallow angle of attack, and I just make sure the blade follows that line. I can draw a straight line just like that. Now here I got a little bit of a curve, so again, angle of attack, make sure I can see where I'm cutting, and I'm putting very little pressure and letting the blade do the work. I can just kind of freehand it, and I'm getting pretty good results. So this is a slow process. I got 4. I've made 4 bases. I technically only need 3, but I think we're gonna go ahead and do all 4 of them. Get a new blade in this. I think that's an old blade. That way, I just got kind of a backup or one for the next projects I do for them. So again, just get a new blade, or a sharp blade. Put it in the corner. Shallow angle attack, make sure you can see where you're cutting, and just draw the blade. And you just want to try to keep a smooth motion. Try not to stop if you don't have to. These parts are slightly curved, so and just like that. So I'll do all these areas I got covered up, and then I still have to put a hole in for a foot in this, so I'll do that once I get this masked up. In any little discrepancies in my masking should be fine once I paint everything. So the big 10-inch bases I haven't sanded yet. I wanted to get one of these painted up. I'm gonna try to get these bases painted tonight. It'll be a very long day, but they've taken a little bit longer than I thought. Oops. So I didn't have my angle quite right there, so I need to come back and come back down. Basically, I'm lining up the blade with the outline of the white. All right, here where it curves a little bit, and I can't do that because it's not a straight edge. I'm just very carefully going in there and cutting it. So I was thinking, because initially I thought, oh man, I wish I had black resin to print in. Even if I had black resin to print in, I probably would still have to do some masking and painting. I don't know, maybe not. Okay, now let's see if we got. And I just peel these off slowly to make sure, in case I missed something, that I don't pull up the area I want to keep masked. Just pull it up slowly so I can go back and recut. So right there, I'm going to redo that mask. It's off of just a little bit. Probably redo that one. It's not bad, but. So if I see a little bit of white, I'm really not worried about it because, again, this is going to get painted black and they'll get covered up and it'll look good. So I see a little bit of white. It's not the end of the world. What I don't want to see is gray. I'd rather see a little white than gray. Okay, so right there, I need to cut that corner a little bit more. I felt to go through. Oops, dang it. See, I'm going too fast. So this white resin's actually got a little translucency to it. It's kind of nice. It's got a, it looks exactly like I wanted it to look. It doesn't look painted. It looks like translucent plastic, which is kind of nice. I've toyed with the idea of not painting the bottom black because it's actually not 100% opaque. You could actually light it up from the bottom, but I'm going to go ahead and paint the bottoms black just because I don't know. So the hardest part is going to be this circle because it's a circle. Circles are harder to do. Okay, so that looks really damn good. So now let's do the circle. Oops. Let's see if I can do this freehand. I'm not sure how else that I would do it. So each one, this one took me about, I don't know, once I kind of got a rhythm going on, it took me about 30 minutes to mask maybe. Okay, so now let me see if I can, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down in. I'm not even moving the knife, I'm just turning the base. There's actually a little bit of a groove there between the two colors of resin, which is working out perfectly. Oops, I got off a little bit there, that's okay. Okay, I can feel where I may not be able to get the 10-inch base done because I took my son to soccer practice, but I think I get the smaller bases done tonight. Okay, so it looks good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get a hole made for one of the characters. Let's do Jordy. So to do this, I just place his feet and kind of like, okay, where do I want him to stand? I want to make sure that I drill a hole either in solid white or solid gray. So I think we're going to put a peg on his back foot, and I'm going to put it right there. So, and I'm using 1/8 inch brass rod. So I got an 1/8 inch drill bit in my pin vise, which is a very big drill bit for a pin vise. And I'm drilling up. You can't see it, but I'm drilling up into his leg, up into that putty that I put in to fill everything. It doesn't have to go crazy far up. Okay, so I drilled a hole in the bottom of his leg, or of his foot. Okay. And I'm just going to take a little blue tack. I think you're standing over here somewhere. Pretty close, not to be exact. Yeah, right about there. And give a little push. And I got a little peg of blue tack. And again, this doesn't have to be 100% accurate because it's a custom made base. So I'm just going to give a little push with that. Drill my hole. It's a little dull. And I'm going through resin that's about 1/2 inch thick here. Come on, you can do it. And I'm drilling all the way through, making the pegs long enough to where they just touch the underside of the base. And it's a tight fit, so I wall it out just a little bit. Okay. And then I get some 1/8 inch brass rod. Here, doesn't need to be crazy long, so I'm gonna cut some of this off. I'm gonna file this so it's better shape, and then I'm gonna roughen this up. I don't need a whole lot of this to stick out of his foot, like 1/4 inch or maybe a little more. so I just put some glue in his foot, and I'm just off camera here. I'm gonna put this rod in and tap it in and get the excess glue off. Now he stands on his own, so this peg is just an insurance so he doesn't fall over. Just gonna check the depth and tap it in just a little bit more. There we go. And I'm going to file the tip of the peg so it's a little more rounded. And there we go. So now he's pegged. So like I said, he stands on his own, but now if he gets bumped or anything, you know, he's not going to fall over automatically. So it's just a little insurance policy that he doesn't fall over on his own. So there you go. That's how you pin a foot and do that stuff. So I'm going to paint this one and take the mask off and see what it looks like. I'm just going to use a spray can. Okay, so after a lot of work, the bases are done. And they look pretty good. I'm pretty happy with these. So these, I have to remember who goes with what. I think this is Data's base. It doesn't matter. They're all the same, except for Wharf's is bigger. But yeah, it looks good. So I just flat coated them this morning. But I think these look pretty good overall. It was a lot of work. Probably, I don't know if I could have done it. I wonder if I could have done it something a different way. Maybe just had a big circle and printed out masks. But I kind of like this white resin because it kind of has like a translucency to it. It's really hard to see in camera, but in person it kind of has this translucency to it. So it looks pretty good. I'm happy with these. It took a full day. Quite a bit of money and materials and stuff, but I think these will work really nicely for the figure. So now I'm going to put these to the side, and I'm going to work on their shirts. Okay, so I'm going to start off with LaForge, Data, and Wharf, since they all have the same colored tunic or shirt, kind of a darkish yellow color. So the first thing I got to do is I got to mask off skin tones, and this is where I'll use silly putty. So because I've got soft shapes. The hardest part on these, I think, will be I'll get all the yellow sprayed, which is kind of this center. I want to mask off the faces and the hands and get just a very light sanding to this clothes, because from all the spraying of paints, it's got like a little rough texture to it. So I want to smooth that out a little bit, which I typically do anyway. I need to paint his Data's phaser. I still need to paint the accessories. I was going to do that yesterday when I was working on the bases, but the bases took all day. I mean, I worked pretty late last night to get this done so I could get them dried and everything. So I'm going to use some silly putty to just mask off their skin tones, and I'll just have to brush touch around the edges of their collars and stuff. Not the collars, but the cuffs and stuff, which is no big deal. So just take some silly putty, cover up their hands and their heads. And this is one reason why I left LaForge's arm off, is because it'd be hard to mask. I'm kind of thinking I should have left the Wharf's arm off at this point now, but it's too late because it's glued on. It's never coming off. So yeah, so just silly putty over everything. This will be a relatively quick process. And then I'll have to I'll give everything just a very light sanding to smooth out the dry spray from all the previous layers of paint. And then we'll I'll have to mix a custom yellow for these guys, which shouldn't be too hard. I think I've got something that's going to be pretty close, and we'll do a little shading on it too. And then the black is everything else just kind of goes black. The belt, or maybe like their shoes go a little kind of like semi-gloss, so I'll just change up kind of like the maybe the finish on them a little bit, but I think everything else is pretty much just black. So what I don't want to do is get any of the uniform paint on their skin tones. It worked really hard to get those done, so I'd rather have little brush touch-ups around these edges than trying to get paint off their skin. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to slowly putty around everything. And then all the uniforms have, I think the trimmer on the neck is, I can't tell if it's gold or if it's the same color to the uniform. I have to look. So yeah, I'm just going to slowly put everything, give it a light sanding, and then we'll mix up some paint. Okay, so now I'm working on mixing up a yellow for the outfit. So I sent a photo to my client as far as what I'm going to use for my reference, and I found a picture of a replica prop from a company called Innovos. They make high-end replicas. Because when I was looking at reference photos online, Jordy, Data, and LaForge, all their shirts are the same, but since they're screen captures of the show, it's really hard to get an idea of what the colors are actually supposed to be, because the lighting's so different in each scene. So I'm mixing up some yellow here. It's got a little bit of green in it, so I'm mixing up some 329 Mr. Color yellow, and I'm going to put just a little bit of green in it, I think, just to knock it down a little bit, and then we'll do a little bit just some subtle shading. There's not a whole lot of wrinkles and stuff in their outfit, but we'll do a little bit. And then for the black, I'm probably just going to hand paint it, because the lines are well defined, and I think it'll be pretty easy to hand paint. We'll see. My little badger stirrer, which I love. So when I mix the paint, I dump the paint out, and then I fill the bottle up with thinner, and then fill the bottle halfway up with thinner again, and that gets me kind of my initial paint ratio. So this is 2 bottles of Mr. Color 329, and I'm going to try to mix up enough to have left over for future projects. If not, I have this referenced in my video to how to do this, so I get as close as I can. That's one thing when you do when you're trying to match something later down the line. And then I got some Mr. Color 120 olive green. And I'm going to put just a little bit of this in here. I just want to knock this brightness down a hair. It's a little too bright right now. And looking at the photo online, it's got just a hint of green in it. I'm just going to take what's on my stir here and put that in, see what that does. That actually got it pretty damn close, I think. Actually, maybe a little too much. Okay, so I put just a little bit of olive green there and knocked it down a little too much. So now I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of number 58 orange yellow. I'll try to get this as close as we can. Yeah, it's way too much green. Okay, so I got to bring it back up now. That's pretty close. Let me clean up my stirrer. And I may add a touch of white to this. Add a touch of white to this. There we go. So that's pretty damn close, I think. I'll put up to my screen. Yeah, that's pretty fucking close right there. Alrighty. So we're going to go with this, I think. Check the consistency. Alright, so just for my reference later, so I have to mix this again. I've got 2 bottles of number 329 in there. I've got just a touch of number 120 olive green, and then I've got a bottle of number 58 orange yellow, and then just a touch of Mr. Color white to get the color here. It looks pretty damn close, so we're going to go with this. I'm just going to go ahead and use this bottle up, and I'll put this in, and I'll put this whatever's left over in a jar and mark it so I know what it's for. Probably I'll just put in a couple of these yellow jars. I don't think it's going to take a lot to cover. I'm going to, before I spray the yellow on the uniforms, I'm going to put a base coat of, just to even things out, with a little bit of gray. I was going to use craft paints, but I don't have the right colors to mix what I wanted, so I decided to do the Mr. Color paints. I'm going to put this all to the side here. And I want to do, I'll do some semi-transparent warm gray number 2. Sorry, I had to turn my stuff on. I'm just gonna put this down to even the tones out on the uniforms, and it'll give me a nice kind of bright base coat too. Dust these off again. Double check my silly putty. I'm gonna have to go in here and tighten up the silly putty work since I'm using a Mr. Color paint. It doesn't hand brush very well. I have to touch up all the edges along the hands and stuff. I might just paint the inside, the cuffs black. We'll see, because they'd be black anyway. Could be like a shadow. Okay. Just gotta worry about the top because the pants go black. It's a light coat. So the arms go the same color as the tunic, that yellow color, and the sides of the shirt go black along with everything else. So I'll spray this on, we'll let this dry a little bit, and we'll base coat the yellow. Okay, so gave everything a little light coat of that gray. So what I've done is I mixed up a shadow color here. I took the color I mixed up and I added a little bit of Mr. Color 131 propeller color. It's kind of a reddish brown. And I'm going to go in and do some pre-shading in the wrinkles and then layer the yellow on top of that. So this has been thinned. And so we're going to go in there and do some shading and stuff on the uniform. So I really just have to worry about the center part and the arms. So I'll show a little bit on camera, and then I'll do the rest off. So I'm just hitting the recesses of the wrinkles. This will be pretty subtle. It's not going to be crazy contrasty. Yellow's a hard color to do. It's really easy to make it look muddy. And I'm going to kind of create some false shadows that really aren't in the sculpt either. I'm just going to kind of bring out like the elbow and stuff. There's not really nothing there to kind of bring out the sculpt. So I'm going to just kind of add my own little shadow. Okay, so I think you get the idea there. So we're just going to continue doing this on all three characters. And then we'll come back and spray the main color. Okay, so now I'm missing on the base color, and it's looking pretty good. I think after I'm done with this, I'll probably go in and add a few more little highlights to it. But this is pretty much really close to the color I was looking for. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. So I'm just missing on a real light. Slowly building it up because yellow doesn't cover very well. So we're kind of using that to our advantage for the shading and stuff. And it's really subtle, which is kind of what I wanted. So I may go and have one more highlight on these when I'm done. So this is Wharf, obviously. Put him over there. And then what's interesting is that all three were sculpted by different sculptors, so they all have different kind of aesthetics. Jordy's sculpt is a little like the details are just like the wrinkles are sharper, like they're not so soft and flowy in his uniform. It's kind of interesting. And Data and Wharf's are a little more flowy, a little more natural looking, I think. So I'm gonna make sure I do Jordy's arm at the same time I do his body so they match. So once we get the yellow on, it dries for a little bit. I'll seal it, and then we'll start laying in the black. And like I said, I'll probably just hand paint that carefully. I think it's easier than trying to mask on all these complex curves and everything. And with Silly Putty, I want to get the edge I would like, so I think it's just easier to hand paint it. I'm not sure if you're seeing the shading in camera because with this paint it goes on kind of like semi-gloss, a little shiny. It's labeled as gloss, but unless you have like a mirror finish, it doesn't actually come out glossy. So looking at Wharf and Jordy, comparing, make sure that these are pretty similar in tone. And now let's do his arm. And we'll just build it up till it matches the rest of them. So, as I mentioned before, I've got Silly Putty on here and I'm using Mr. Color paints. Now, since I'm kind of just misting this on real light, it probably won't affect the silly putty. But if you spray on Mr. Color paint wet on silly putty, it'll melt the silly putty because you're dealing with thinner, which is a solvent, on top of putty, which is silly putty, which is plastic, a type of plastic. Actually, I kind of dig this yellow. This looks pretty accurate to what I see on screen. The uniform I'm looking at is pretty bright, I think. I'll send a picture to my client and see what he thinks. But I think this looks more screen accurate to me, personally. Alright, let's look at this compared to the rest of Jordy. Make sure we're matching. And we are. And let's do data real quick. Data's details are a little softer, meaning that the wrinkles are just not like the forged body sculpt. I don't want to say rougher because that's not, but maybe the texture's a little rougher. Or I think these folds and stuff on Warp and Data and Riker are a little more natural. I think, if I remember correctly, these are all sculpted by different sculptors. So if I can get these three guys suits done with the black, we'll see how far we get today. That'd be a really good day. I don't want to get too optimistic. I thought the bases would take like half as much time as they did. So all the references I see, the arm is all yellow, and the black separates here in the in the waist area. Okay, it's looking pretty good, I think. Make sure we got even coverage. When you do a technique like this, it's kind of hard to make sure you have even cover. So that's why I just keep going over it lightly. There's not much paint coming on my airbrush right now. It's pretty light. And I'm gonna let this dry for a good 30-40 minutes before I seal it. I don't want to have it crazy like it did when I did the. Sometimes I get a little anxious and I will seal the paint too fast and it likes to craze, which is no fun. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna let this dry down for a little bit and I'm gonna look at it and I may add some more highlight. We'll see. Okay, so as I add one more highlight, so I just took some of that base color, add some white to it, and just kind of hitting the tops of some of these really hard wrinkles, just here and there, pretty lightly. Gives this guy a little more definition. When I seal this, it'll pop a little more. I just want to kind of give it a little more pump. I'm going in pretty light. Tops of the biceps. Stuff like that. So I'm not going all over, just kind of picking some spots. I think my air compressor just turned off. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to do this to the other guys. Let this sit for a while, and then we'll seal them. And I think the yellow will be done. That's looking pretty good, I think. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going back to my base color and just misting a little bit of this back on. Saw a few spots were a little light, and I think it's gonna finish up the yellow, and we'll let it dry and seal. So we're just misting on the base coat again. Got some nice subtle shading in the uniforms, and then we'll work on the black after that. And just real light mist. I don't want to cover up my previous work. Okay. Yeah, so it's just a little bit darker than my reference, but that's okay. Once I put the black on too, it'll pop nicely. So there we go. Let this sit. We'll seal it, and then we'll work on the black. Okay, so I just sealed the yellow, and it looks pretty damn good, I think. I'm real happy with this. The shading has popped a little bit more. We'll let this dry. And what I think we're going to do for the black, instead of hand painting everything, I'm going to probably cut in just the edges around where the yellow's got to go, and then probably silly putty. So if I just kind of come in and brush touch the edges, I can silly putty over the yellow, I think, relatively, and then spray the black. I'll just get an even finish, but we'll see. If I had black Stynylrez res, I would hand brush that stuff, but I don't have any. That stuff hand brushes so really nice. Hand brushes beautifully. I use it on like Hellboy's pants and stuff in the past, and it brushes on really nice. It levels out very well, and it's great for hand brushing. But we'll see. Yeah, I think I might just cut in and then silly putty and then spray. We'll see. Okay, so I decided to just go ahead and hand paint the black. It's going pretty smoothly. So this is just the craft paint. I put a little bit of water in it. It'll probably take 2 coats. But the line on the uniform is sculpted very nicely, so it's pretty easy to go in. As you can see on Jordy, I've already done the shirt first coat. I'm gonna let that dry. I'll do a second coat, and then I'll do the bottom, and then I'll seal everything. And then what I'll do is I'll pick out the shoes, and I think this little strap around here goes like maybe a satin. So yeah, it's going pretty smooth. You can see it's pretty wet. I put it on pretty thick because it's it's craft paint. It dries down really nice. That's what we're gonna do. So I'm just gonna hand paint the black on these guys and go from there. Okay, so I kind of wait for the black to dry and top coat it as it dries. I'm working on a Riker's tunic. So it's kind of a burgundy color. Again, depending on what picture you look at, it's all over the place. It kind of looks burnt orange, kind of looks burgundy. So I'm gonna go with the burgundy kind of color. So far what I've done is I've put his hands in the face, and I base coated it in a custom red that I had left over from a Gladiator kit I did a while back. So just kind of got this bright red. Now I'm gonna go with wine red and add shadows, and then I think this will get me pretty damn close. We'll see. This is a relatively dark color, but I'm gonna add it as shadow, and then mist over it to shift the color a little bit. So right now, basically, what I have are kind of what we would consider my mid-tone / highlights. So So sometimes I'll add the shadows, then add the paint on top, or I'll do vice versa. I'll like do a mid-tone and add shadows. Kind of depends on what the base coat is and what I'm trying to do. Sometimes it's easier. Sometimes it's easier to do what I'm doing now, or sometimes it's easier to do what I do with the yellow. So also I sent a picture of my client of the yellow, and he approved it. He likes it. I kind of went a little bit between what we see on screen and that costume. I thought the costume was a little bright. I don't think it's that bright on screen, so I just made it a little darker. Okay, so this wine red, I'll thin this down. And then I got Riker to do, so I don't need a lot of it. I really like this color. This is a really pretty color. I use this for Magneto all the time as a shadow color. It works really well for mags. Alright, let's see what this does. So my brush. Turn my air pressure down a little bit. Okay. So I think today I can get the black, like the colors and the blacks done on their uniforms. And then we'll see where we are. I worked really late last night, so I'm kind of tired. But we'll see. Because then after that, all that's left is to hand paint. Like, I got to do the trimmer on the collars, which I'll have to kind of color match. And then I got to hand paint the communicators and just the accessories and stuff. So we're kind of in the home stretch once I get these uniforms done. Again, you may not be able to see this right away. See, this color's dark enough to do what I wanted to do. He's got some pecs molded in, so we'll bring those out a little bit. Again, it's probably hard for you guys to see what this is doing. Reflections and stuff. It's hard for me to see sometimes. Some very subtle details molded in these sculpts. Kind of hard to see sometimes. I'm slowly building these up. This might not be quite the right color. I might have to darken it down. We'll see. We will see. You gotta remember, I don't have to shade everything. I just gotta shade the arms and the chest and the back. don't talking much because it's just shading, getting all the shadows. So I'm going to do this, and then I'll come back when I'm ready to start blending it in. Okay, so I misted that color on, and it's still too bright. It's like too bright red, so I went ahead and added some black to the wine, and we're going to kind of repeat the same step. I'm going to go and hit the shadows again, and then kind of mist this on, because the color right out of the bottle is pretty damn close to what he's wearing. I think my base coat was just too bright. Just add a little black to the wine color. And this should, I think, will get me there. And plus it's shiny right now, so it's really hard to see anything. So when you do this, you just kind of have to know what your paint's going to do after you seal it. I know that after I seal it, it's going to darken down a little bit and my shading's going to pop. I just know that from using these paints for 15 plus years. I know how they react and how they dry down. I can see already that's going to be an improvement from what I had. So I'm going to do this and then we'll come back. Alrighty, so I went ahead and sealed that, and it looks pretty damn good. I mean, I'm looking at my screen, and it's pretty much spot on. So I'm going to let this dry a little bit longer. I'm going to hand paint the black like I did on the other guys, seal it, and we'll come back. And then we'll see what time of the day it is, and then we may call it a day, or we may continue. But Riker's looking good, and the other guys are drying. Okay, so I'm going to call this work in progress and the day done. I got all the black, yellow, I basically got their clothes painted. So now all left to do is paint like the phasers, the tricorder, and Worf's weapon and their communicator. So at least one day, maybe 2 days to finish these guys up, but they're looking really good. So yeah, a lot of work today. We're looking really sharp. I think the colors are pretty accurate to what we would see on screen. A little punchy here in camera, especially Riker. He's not quite that red in person. Bring that exposure a little bit. But you can definitely tell that these are all sculpted by different sculptors. Slightly different styles, but they all fit really well together. I think the bases look good. It's a nice, technically in the show, this is like one transporter pad. So like that's how that usually works. So this is like the whole pad. I played with the idea of making them high gloss, but I like them kind of this color. Another thing I'm going to do is I'll paint some satin finish on the boots. But on that, they're looking really good. So that's it for today and this work in progress. Last one, I'll just do some hand painting of all the details and hopefully wrap this guy up in a day or two. Thanks for watching.